I've had a pretty lucky life. Oh, there were serious things to survive, and an attempted rape, an almost paralyzing back condition, a near fatal river rafting experience. But most of my survival stories are just about paying the rent. As any actor knows, surviving means working a lot of odd jobs until your career kicks in, and boy, did I have my share. All sorts of jobs. Bartending and waitressing were the most common, but I also worked on and off for a secretarial temp service. Now, this was the late 70s, and it was the time before cell phones and laptops. Hard to imagine that now. Typewriters had evolved to be electric, IBMs mostly, and there were multiple landline phones with buttons you had to manipulate. Having been an English major in college, I was a pretty good typist and also had my own version of shorthand for class note taking. So my skills were useful to these agencies. The pay was okay, the work hours flexible, even if the jobs were boring. When the temp agency called about this particular secretarial job at the hospital, I was surprised at how well it paid, but it required a minimum 2-week full-time commitment. Full-time. Oh my God, that's an anathema to an actor, a 9-to-5 job. But I really needed the money. So I agreed to the assignment, put on dress and heels, and went that first morning to report for my secretarial work at the eye clinic. At the personnel department, a kindly looking middle-aged woman greeted me and pointed to a chair in front of her desk. "Oh, Miss Lipari, I am so happy you can take on this 2-week assignment. It might even go on longer if you like." She smiled. In my mind, I thought, hell no, lady, I'll be back to auditioning in 2 weeks. She looked down at her papers, and I noticed how her hair stayed in place. Hairspray held every strand of her chin-length bob prisoner. "You are being assigned to our eye research clinic, and you'll be working with our head researcher, Dr. O'Connor. You will report directly to him." And she handed me a 3x5 index cards with Dr. Shaughnessy O'Connor's name on it, the room number and telephone extension. She gave me directions on how to get there, and I left on my assignment. The first thing I noticed when I entered the clinic was the shelves filled with glass containers. I moved to look more closely, but Dr. O'Connor burst into the room, face beaming, with an ear-to-ear grin with deep-seated dynamic wrinkles around his poppy blue eyes. He was about 6 feet tall, in his 40s, with thick, curly red hair, pale skin, and an athletic body, not handsome, but charismatic in some way. "There you are, fantastic," he said with a thick Irish brogue. "Finally, they sent me some help." He guided me to a desk where a large stack of papers sat. "Now these need to get entered into my system." He booted up a desktop computer, one of the first I had ever seen. It was connected to some hospital mainframe. "The program's pretty easy to follow, see? You just enter the information. Now you call me if you have any trouble. I'm just in the next room." I looked down at the paper on the top of the stack. It was a formal form with the title, "Eye Donation." Eye donation? With growing horror, I took a closer look at the glass containers on the shelves. They were filled with eyeballs. Eyeballs just floating around in some fluid. Titles on the bottles indicated their purpose: remove vitreous fluid, keep for lens research, harvest for sclera. This was a fucking eyeball research clinic. I wanted to throw up. I stood frozen, staring at the disembodied human eyeballs staring back at me. I forced myself to look away, and I started typing the information from the forms. And about an hour passed, and then O'Connor burst back into the room. He never entered a room. Bursting was the only way he knew how to come in. He looked at the diminished stack and he beamed. "Good on you, Joanna. Great job. Now let's take a break. Tell me a wee bit about yourself." And I told him about my budding acting career, my college days, my dreams, all that stuff. And O'Connor continued smiling. "You know, you can make a lot more money dissecting eyes. I need a lab assistant here, and the funding is all set. I was horrified. Dissect human eyes. I shook my head and stood up, backing away toward the door. I wanted to run away, but O'Connor was not going to let me go. Oh, come on, Joe. I can call you that, right? They're only eyes, eyes that are donated to help other people. Then, to my horror, he shoved his hand into a jar, grabbed an eyeball, and tossed it at me. I stepped back and the eyeball landed near my feet and started rolling around. I thought I would faint. Now, don't be a ninny. Pick it up. No. The eyeball had rolled to a stop right in front of the lab door. No way to escape. I stared at it. Oh, be brave. You're a brave girl, Joe. Pick it up. Here, you can use these. And O'Connor tossed me some surgical gloves, and I don't know what happened next. What changed my mind? But I put on the gloves and picked up the eyeball, and I let it roll around in my gloved palm. Now bring that little baby over here, and I'll show you the most amazing thing in the world. We went to the dissection bench. This eye isn't really useful for any research or transplant, so we use eyes like these to perfect dissection techniques. And with that, he began to dissect the eye, explaining the entire process, how to remove the vitreous fluid, that stuff inside your eye that keeps it round. It's used to help people with collapsing eyes, O'Connor said. Now, the white part of your eye is called the sclera, and it's a sort of tough, muscly type of tissue, and that can be used to replace the muscle lost on burn victims. And the lens, that oval piece, there are lens transplants we're working on. The eye is the most amazing part of the body, Joe. Unlike the rest of you, your eye is a self-contained, intricate system connected only to the rest of you through the optic nerve. He was so passionate. It was mesmerizing. And by the end of the dissection, I was hooked. Want to try one? I nodded. He pointed to a jar, and I went over and put my hand in and pulled out another eye, and then I dissected it. I was enthralled. As it turned out, the lab assistant job was perfect for me. It was interesting. It paid well with flexible hours. It was fascinating. O'Connor was fascinating. I worked at that lab on and off for over a year, and I learned so much, not just about eyes, but medicine and science and research. Sure, it was just a survival job, but one of the best I ever had.